Welcome to the Community Action Podcast. Thank you for joining us for a conversation about emotional intelligence. My name is Jamie Carney, and here with me today is Gail Lombardi and Jesse Quintana. We are family coaches and facilitators for the Future Story Initiative. The Future Story Initiative is a place where community members can receive information and support while working on exiting poverty. Today, our conversation will be about emotional intelligence. And so, what is emotional intelligence?
Emotional intelligence. First of all, I just want to say thank you to everybody for joining. Emotional intelligence is probably one of my favorite subjects because it's played such a vital role in my life. And we feel like it's an important subject to talk about because not only does it affect, your everyday life, whether it's your employment, whether it's your relationships, but also your personal health as well, your mental health, your physical health. And we feel like it's really important to talk about because it's not talked about enough.
I agree, Jesse. Emotional intelligence is one of my favorite topics to even when I'm doing family coaching to get them really realize how this can control every success that you have and move out of whatever circumstances you are. Because with emotional intelligence, identifying it, even in my personal life, it has made such a difference in how things are happening and a more positive outcome on everything. So this is an exciting topic.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is recognizing your emotions and managing them, as well as recognizing others' emotions.
Right. So, Jesse, if I'm managing them and I'm not showing any kind of reaction to anything, does that mean I have emotional intelligence?
I think you have emotional intelligence either way, whether it's, a high-level emotional intelligence or not. So it really depends on your reaction. So if you're talking strictly physical, I think a lot of us have mastered the ability to not show our emotions on the outside, right? So something happens, we don't blow up at it, we don't go off on it. We're able to just keep a stone cold face, and people will be like, they're pretty good with their emotions, They handle stress really well. However, on the inside, you could be really struggling throughout your day. You could be having a hard time thinking, having a hard time getting your work done. Like if something ever happened to you to where like you're at work and you're trying to get your work done, you're on your computer, and then like something really stressful happens, and then you're like, I got to get away from my desk. And then you come back and you still just can't focus on it.
Yes.
Like you're trying, like it's happened many times. We've had many times where Jamie would come in and be like, I just can't focus today, because there's like something going on that's highly stressful, and it's really hard to get into like critical thinking when you're stressed, and you're in an emotional state.
I think you could make the mistake of thinking you've got your emotions under control, but all of a sudden you've got a headache, you're like sick, you're a little crabby to your coworkers, or I think, I've dealt with this. Well, no, you've just stuffed it, and that's when it starts being damaging to your body. So,
sure. I mean, a lot of people can say, hey, I deal with my emotions well. And then other people can say, I don't really think you deal with emotions very well.
Ask us what
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just, and different people's points of view are going to be like whether they feel they deal with their emotions well or not,
Right.
What we're going to talk about is what the effects are of not managing your emotions. And what we mean by that is, are we fully managing them? Not just our response physically to them, but also internally, our body's response mentally. And then what happens if we don't do that? And then what do we do if we get to a point where we feel like we're not able to control our emotions? So in order to do that, we need to kind of understand a little bit about the body. We need to understand a little bit about what's going on, and about what it means to have emotional intelligence. So one way I like to do this is I've done a lot of research. I'm not a doctor or anything like that. I don't have a doctorate, but I feel like I'm pretty smart when it comes to certain parts of the brain and what's going on when you get emotionally hijacked. Right. When you get into these situations where something has happened and now I can't control my emotions and I can't think clearly through it, and I'm just having a rough day or a rough few months, and then all of a sudden I'm just like, I'm in this depression because of it, and so one of the things I like to do is talk about the brain a little bit. So one of the parts of the brain I like to talk about is your prefrontal cortex, your prefrontal lobe, which is also the largest part of your brain. That is where our thinking is done. That's where our critical thinking is done, where our logical thinking is done. And that's what allows us to do problem solving and to do all the great things that we do as humans, right? However, there's another part of our brain that's very small, and it's called the amygdala. And that little amygdala has control and can completely wash out our thinking brain, you know? And I find it fascinating. However, what is the amygdala and what's its role? The amygdala's role is to determine by what we're seeing, what we're hearing, what we're experiencing, whether or not there is a threat. So it's kind of like our security system, right? So it makes sure like that we're safe. And then if we're not safe, then it does its job by sending out signals to our pituitary gland, to our adrenal glands to release chemicals. Now, these chemicals are chemicals that we need if we're in a life or death situation, right? So I think we all know what adrenaline is. Adrenaline is one of those natural chemicals that are released in the body when there's a life or death situation. It allows us to be super strong and, you know, to fight off an attacker, to run faster and all this stuff. Another one is also cortisol. Now, cortisol is a natural steroid in the body that does a lot of amazing things that we need it to do. However, it depends on the situation and the levels. There is a cycle in the body that regulates how much cortisol is released. And when it gets to a high level, and then we no longer need it, the pituitary gland will send out signals to say, hey, we don't need it anymore. And then it'll stop. However, when we get into these high stress situations and we allow that cycle to continue without shutting it off, is our brain will basically say, it'll basically recognize it as it still needs it, and it will continue to pump it out.
Does that mean you're constantly feeling like your body's having a threat?
Yeah, I mean, your brain's going to assume that your body's always in threat. Now, you may not be in a real threat. However, some of the situations that we live in nowadays, we kind of feel like it's a threat to us, you know, a threat to our job, a threat to our friendship, a threat to whatever it is. When we perceive it like that in our thinking brain, then our amygdala is going to take over and say, all right, we got a problem here. We need to take charge. Mm-hmm. And it does what it needs to do. And when it's that time, we need that to happen. However, when we allow it to continue to go on is when it starts damaging stuff. And when we're in this moment where all these chemicals have come out in our body, it diminishes our thinking brain.
Right.
It takes away blood from other parts of the body that it's not needed, because you don't need it in a life or death situation. So this takes away from our ability to think clearly. Rationalize. Right. And then what happens is these chemicals stay in your body for hours on end. Typically around 4 hours if you're able to suppress it after that and get over what it was that caused you this stress. If you don't, then it can just be a vicious cycle that continues. Another thing about it is the way the brain works is it learns by pattern and it learns by memories. So if something was a threat in the past to us and it happens later on, we're still going to perceive it. Our brain is going to perceive it as a threat still. That's why we have things like triggers that we call triggers, right? Something that's happened to us a long time ago, and then it happens again, and all of a sudden we instantly get those feelings again.
I think trigger is an important point because you can have a great job that you like, and then something happens or something said that you had 10, 15 years ago that you walked out on. Man, that emotional intelligence, without that, you're going to, identifying that, you're going to say, psh, I'm gone. And there, it affects everything you've done without recognizing it, identifying it. That's an important in the emotional.
Well, yeah, because your brain says, "Oh, I remember this situation from before, and it was a problem. So we need to make sure that we're ready for it." And then all of a sudden, you're like, you got all these chemicals flooding in your body, and you're feeling like, you felt like it just happened yesterday. Yep. You know. True. And then not only that, but if you're continuing to allow yourself to go through this, what you're doing is you're building a pattern for your brain to follow and to follow much quicker next time. So let's say the same situation happens again, your response to it's going to be much quicker. Mm-hmm. And basically kind of similar to the same because you're going to be flooded with all these chemicals, right? And then, so for me, I remember when I was younger, I had a really bad anger problem, and I used to go to counseling and stuff, but I didn't really understand things as much because I was younger and didn't really have the ability to like understand what they were talking about. But I used to blow up over the smallest things, and then they would say, well, you just need to take a step back next time. And I would be like, listen, I don't think you understand. Like, it's just instant reaction, because that's kind of how I train my body. Like, I train my brain to like, this happens, this is our response to it. And then I wouldn't even think about it, and then I couldn't control it. It would be like, what is wrong with me? Like, there's something wrong with me. If you're telling me that you can do that, then there's something wrong with me. And this is what a lot of people feel. They feel like there's something wrong with them because they don't really understand what is going on in their body, what is going on in their brain, how their reactions are, and how they have kind of almost programmed their brains to react like this. Now, why do we talk about this brain stuff? What's so important to talk about what is going on in the brain? Besides for the fact that we want to understand why we're reacting the way we are. Right. The research that's being done, and some of the research that I've read, again, I like to say that I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but I've done extensive research on this subject, specifically on cortisol and the effects of high levels of cortisol in the body. And some of the things that are correlated to high levels of cortisol in the body are high blood pressure, diabetes, depression, obesity, and the kicker, which is kind of ironic because they're almost the same thing, anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right. It's hard to imagine that going through emotional hijacking would cause you anxiety, because anxiety causes an emotional hijacking, right?
Circle.
Yeah. And so like, if you're not really consciously thinking about this stuff and realizing this is what's going on with me and there's nothing wrong with me, I just need to like find some strategies and find a way to stop this process from happening and to be in my thinking brain. So, that's like, you got to find those, or else you're just going to continue this vicious cycle.
So that's what I like about when we do this class on emotional intelligence, are the strategies that we produce, and everybody has a way that they can identify, but identifying one or two of the strategies that work for you so that you can stop this cycle. And
sure.
So, yeah.
And it's going to be, it's going to be different for everybody. Obviously, we know that. However, there are some strategies that seem to work consistently for a majority of individuals. Right. It's just in how it's done,
So I think in order to control emotional hijacking, you first need to be able to understand what's going on in your body. So maybe you've been triggered. Your body's having a reaction. Maybe you're having your heart's beating. Maybe you're starting to sweat a little bit. First, you got to identify that. The next step then would be to stop, take a pause, take a deep breath. Yeah. One of the things that helps re-engage that thinking brain is that to get that oxygen back away from those other parts of your body and back into your brain.
Right. Because I think that obviously when your brain determines that there's a threat, the amygdala sends out these chemicals, it's taken away from other parts of your brain that aren't needed. Mm-hmm. And so taking a second or a minute or however long it is to just pause and to re-oxygenate those parts of your brain again, that you really need for critical and logical thinking. But not only that, it gives you a chance to take a step back from whatever the situation is and to give yourself a pause moment. Take your mind off of whatever it is that's causing you distress and focusing on your breathing.
And I like, while I'm breathing, is to practice the strategy of asking myself, okay, what caused this? Is this real, or is this like a trigger from something that's happened in the past, and what's ever happened is not really what is happening? And so identifying it by asking the question, what's going on?
Right. Is this a real threat to me?
Or is this just, yeah, right.
Should I be fearful of this, or is it just something that's kind of upset me and now I'm allowing it to take control of me? Does it really need to take that power over me? Or do I just need to step back and realize it and
Right.
see for what it is?
And I think when we're working with somebody or we see somebody in this circumstance, that's something that we need to also do our emotional intelligence and realize this person, whatever's going on, it's real to them.
I think that's a good point, because if you're able to, Jesse, you said that you're identifying other people's emotions is a big part of emotional intelligence. And so if you're working with somebody or have somebody there who is struggling, and you can identify that before they can, then you can have them stop and take a deep breath and take that moment to collect themselves and get things back in line.
And by asking curious questions, you're helping them identify what's really going on. So, and then you can, yes, it's real, or no, it's nothing, and then you go from there. But that's part of the emotional intelligence, is respecting anybody where they're at, what they're doing. It's real to them. So help them use the steps to get through that.
Right.
That's an important point. Yeah.
So what kind of tools and things do you guys do to identify or combat emotional hijacking?
I think for me, and this might be opposite for other people, but when I have a stressful situation happen, especially if it's from somebody else's emotions,
Right.
I need to step away from the situation and regain myself until I'm at a point where I know that my body is calm and I'm not going to like get emotional about it and get amped up. I just got to get myself away from that situation, whether it's going to another room or go for a walk or go outside, whatever the case may be. Until I know that my body is calm, I have to get out of that situation if I possibly can.
Right.
For other people, it might be different. It might be they need to talk it out. Oh, okay, I'm feeling this way. This is why I'm feeling this way. And that helps them. For me, I'm the opposite. But that's kind of like one of the things that I need to do. Taking some of that, depending on what the situation is, if it's a high stress thing and I'm like, I'm already at that point where it's like ready to get hijacked. That's when I'm going to go exercise and get some of that energy out doing something else. I may go for a brisk walk. I may, listen to music while I'm doing it, kind of rewire my brain to the like happy music, not angry music, and whatever it is to get myself refocused,
I think mine, I've used all of these strategies at different points. It all depends on what it is. But I like what Jesse said. Each circumstance is different. But I think mine is mostly now that I know emotional intelligence. I wish that I had it years ago. But asking the curious question after I breathe, what is this? And that helps me a lot. And of course, then mine is, because I'm not a guy and I don't stuff things down, okay, is to talk with a friend, and do the bouncing off the wall. And maybe they haven't said anything, but just getting it out there.
Yeah.
And then that helps. So.
I think the main thing though that we'd have to like let everybody know, and just kind of one thing that people need to keep in mind is some of these things aren't like going to happen overnight.
Right.
It's not going to be like the first time and all of a sudden you're going to be like, I'm going to take this one breath and I'm going to be all great now. No, it takes time, and it takes rewiring of your brain, and it takes repetition, but it will get easier.
Well, I like that we do this class all the time. Mm-hmm. I've been with Community Action 10 years, and you guys quite a deal. And we do this class all the time. Just getting ready for this podcast, we've been joking with each other about, okay, practice our emotional intelligence and is stress. It's a lifetime practice and recognizing it. And it's cut yourself some slack and just regroup. So,
But I do like what you said earlier, Gail, when you said, I asked myself those questions. What was it that triggered me? Why am I reacting like this? And really being able to understand and figure out what the next steps are. Sometimes people use journaling or meditation to help themselves through emotional hijackings and trying to figure that out. So I think that's another great tool that people can use as they're trying to work through and perfect this emotional intelligence.
And that's what we do as family coaches, is just helping them think out of the box. If they've never heard of emotional intelligence, or this is how I'm always am, I'm never going to change, start thinking out of the box with them and helping them understand is one of the great things that we do at Community Action with the family coaching is identifying it and then giving them tools so that they can start recognizing emotional intelligence and practicing it.
I think also another important part of this is when you've been able to identify and master emotional intelligence, then you can start making changes, big changes and moves in your life. Yeah. And I think that's a huge plus for people that are trying to work on exiting poverty or, work on goals that they maybe have coming up that, can really make those changes in life.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's where our success stories come in. That's when we use that.
Yeah, when you're able to be fully engaged in your thinking brain all the time and still have your emotions but not get hijacked over them, the sky's the limit for as far as what you can do, because all these stressful situations that would normally cause you to not be able to excel at certain things aren't bothering you anymore, and you're able to focus on other things and put your full self into whatever it is you're passionate about.
And I just think we need to make it clear that emotions are a part of life. They're good, they're healthy, they're what keeps us going. And we're not going to say, no, you can't react or you can't get mad. Or we're just saying to recognize them and then turn them into positives, because emotions is part of learning and living. So, yes.
For those of you watching today, I'm going to challenge you to identify some emotional hijacking and things that are triggering you and practice on changing behaviors. Thank you for joining us today for our conversation on emotional hijacking. If you heard something that you're interested in today, please contact Community Action Partnership. We have the Future Story Initiative and Essential Skills workshops that can help you work on changing your future.
And remember, as family coaches, we love doing this. And this brief talk on emotional intelligence usually takes about 2 hours in our classes or periods of months working with somebody individually. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to help you have success stories.
Yeah, thanks for everybody for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you guys again on the next one about poverty.
Thank you for joining us today. Community Action Partnership is a nonprofit organization. All the services we provide are free of charge to income qualifying community members. What we talked about today is just a bit of what we cover in our coaching and workshops. For more information, you can check out our website at cap4action.org. That's CAP, 4action.org. You could also just give us a call at 1-800-326-4843 or come visit one of our locations. We would like to thank our sponsor, Optum Idaho, for making this series possible.